Hi, I'm Blake Mycoskie, the founder and chief shoe giver of TOMS, and you're watching Behind the Brand with Bryan Elliott.
Hey, I'm Bryan Elliott. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Brand. Today I'm here with Blake at TOMS headquarters. Blake, thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here.
I usually ask my guests, how'd you get this job?
Yeah, well, I had the greatest job in the world, I think, and I guess the way I got it is I invented it. So it all started 12 years ago when I was on a farm in Argentina. I saw many children down there that didn't have shoes, and I wanted to do something to help. And so my background was not in philanthropy or in charity. My background was as an entrepreneur, and so I've always had thought about using entrepreneurship to solve problems, usually commercial problems, but in this case I wanted to solve a societal one, and created this idea that if we could sell a pair of shoes today, we would give away a pair of shoes tomorrow. And we actually called them tomorrow's shoes at first, but then that was too long for the tag. So like, here, my shoe here, I tried to put tomorrow's into there and it didn't fit, so I named it TOMS. That's
awesome. Let's go back on the timeline a little bit, back to young Blake.
Yeah.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was younger and I thought about a career, or like in elementary school or whatever, they ask you, what you want to be. I always said a fireman. And it actually was two things. It was either want to be a fireman or want to be a truck driver. But I like the idea of driving a big truck.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah, and I think I also like the idea of kind of like helping people, but also the idea of traveling to new places. My dad was a doctor, my grandfather was a doctor, my aunt was a nurse. Everyone in my family was in the medical profession, but it never really spoke to me.
Did they try and persuade you to go a certain direction in life, like take up law or go for medicine? Or?
That's one of the things I'm really thankful for. Is my parents were both like incredibly supportive of whatever I wanted to do. I ended up, going to college on a tennis scholarship, and then I had an injury and I dropped out of college and I started this laundry business, which was my first company. And most parents, I think, if you called them and said, I'm dropping out of this wonderful university to do people's laundry, I think they would have a little bit of a pause. But my parents were like, well, if that's what you want to do and you feel that's a way to build a career, then great. And so they were very supportive of my earlier entrepreneur days.
But you had, you were planning maybe a pro athletic career, yeah?
Sure, yeah. I mean, my whole life, and I attribute a lot of the work ethic and the discipline and the elements that make an entrepreneur successful to my training as a young tennis player. I actually lived at a tennis academy at age 15, moved away from home, started training at 5 every single morning, like not going to the movies with friends on Friday and Saturday nights and still training. Like, I was a very, very disciplined. I always say that like I had my work ethic in my tennis career is the only reason it got as far as it did. I had very little talent, but I had a lot of work ethic, and so that's how I at least got to the college level.
Well, and maybe as I get to know you, maybe you can add heart to that. Yeah. It's one of the things coaches talk a lot about, like you can't teach heart.
Yeah.
Work ethic, like that movie Rudy comes to mind.
I love Rudy. It's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and
I think it's the only movie I've ever really cried in hard. Like I just that movie hit me so hard.
It might be one of my favorite movies, and it's because he's all heart, right?
Yeah.
He plays with his heart.
I think I self-identify a lot with that character, and that's why that movie was such an important. I mean, literally, it's funny. I think back to early days, when we had MySpace pages, and you had favorite movie. Mine was always Rudy. So it's interesting you brought that up.
That's awesome. Yeah, we can dig into that too. The psyche of that, or the interesting psychological implications too about being an underdog and being gritty and maybe having not success along the way. But I also wanted to ask, so when you got injured, how did you feel? Because that must have been devastating. You put in all that time, you're away from home, you're basically, like David Beckham, and in soccer academy for his youth, and then it all falls apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I often cite that great Garth Brooks song, I Thank God for Unanswered Prayers, because, I was literally devastated and praying that my leg would heal and I'd get back on the court and that I would be able to resume this career. And then at a point, it became very clear that that just wasn't going to happen. And at that same time, that led to the founding of my first business, which was the laundry business. And the reason I got in the laundry business is I was on crutches, and I literally couldn't carry my laundry down to the facility. And this is back when we had the Yellow Pages before Google. And so I looked in the Yellow Pages for someone to come pick up my laundry, and there was no one to do that. And so I thought, this should be a business. Like, so a lot of people probably would love their laundry to be picked up. And so this injury that seemed so tragic actually was the impetus of my entrepreneur career, which I am incredibly, deeply grateful for, because I realized that that was really my gift and my calling. Maybe all the tennis and all the athletics and the training was actually exactly that, training so that I would have these skill sets and this self-reliance. Tennis is an individual sport. Being an entrepreneur can be very lonely. Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of that was in training for me to be able to, really thrive as an entrepreneur.
That's good stuff. How long did it take you to come to that realization? I mean, maybe the injury itself, you figured, okay, my career's over, but like from the time that you realized it's over to the day that you reinvented yourself, how long was that?
Many years, yeah. I don't think I was able to really look back on that with that sense of gratitude that I have now to the injury, and that sense of thanking God for unanswered prayers until years later. I think it was very painful to not be able to play. Even after I started the laundry business, even after it became successful, it took time to really look back on that with kind of a different set of eyes.
What's your perspective on it now as you reflect? Was that because I'm not necessarily a everything happens for a reason guy. I think that sometimes, I'm sure there's a higher power involved.
Yeah.
I'm a spiritual guy.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that just stuff happens because you're at the right place or the wrong place, at the right time or the wrong time. What's your perspective though on that now?
So I'm a very much everything happens for a reason guy.
Okay.
And even more so every day now, and I journal a lot, and that's been something I've been doing since I'm 15. And if I go back and read journals, I can see unbelievable things that I've written that literally come true 6 months later. I mean, in a way that like freaks me out. I mean, this is the craziest thing that's happened recently, okay? And I've never shared this with anyone. This happened last week, okay? So about 3 years ago, I just randomly was looking at a Patagonia catalog. And on the cover of the catalog was this snowboarder making this beautiful turn in like deep powder in Japan. And I love snowboarding. I've been snowboarding since I was 13. I've never once taken a teared out a picture from a magazine or catalog. But I had this vision board in my home office where I put things that I really want to kind of like have my life vision be a part of, and energetically, like I feel like there's everything that I put up there somehow becomes important in my life. And so I took this thing 3 years ago and I posted it on there, and I did it because I was like, A, I want to be able to snowboard like this someday, and B, I would love to be able to go to Japan and experience that weightlessness of the powder, right? That was my thought. So I put it up there 3 years ago. So recently, my wife and I are spending a lot more time in Jackson Hole. And about 2 weeks ago, I got introduced to this pro snowboarder named Alex Yoder. And someone introduced us because like, you guys are very soulfully connected. Like, he's a very soulful guy. He's creating this whole coffee company to be producing or promoting regenerative farming and agriculture. Like, you guys should ride together. And I was like, wow, I get to ride with a professional snowboarder. Like, it's so cool. And so I go, we're riding. He's actually giving me some tips, and like I'm loving it. And he and so then like the next day, like he comes over for dinner, and his girlfriend, like he's become like my new buddy, and I'm really like kind of helping him with his business now, and he's helping me with my snowboarding, and which kind of my wife's like say this is like my total man crush, right? Like we're really like kind of really bonding fast. And so literally this happened a couple days ago when I was in Jackson. He said, video me doing this like turn, and because I want to show you on something you can do better on your snowboarding technique. So I video him, and I'm looking at the video, and I looked down, and there was this moment in his turn that looked so familiar. And I went to him and I said, Alex, this is a crazy question, but have you ever been on a cover of a Patagonia catalog? And he said, yes, once, 3 years ago. And so he has been, I know, right? It's crazy. Like, it literally has been on my vision board for 3 years. I never knew why. And now he's like my new best friend in Jackson, who I'm helping him build his business, and he's helping me snowboard. So I do feel like I have so many experiences like that have in my life, whether you call it manifesting or everything happens for a reason, where I can look back and say, okay, I met that, or I learned that person so I could learn this, and this thing happened which seemed to be a tragedy or a downturn because it opened the door to this, and literally I can weave my whole life. And so now, like, even with the most recent stuff that's happened, you know, in our campaign in gun violence, like, it's like, oh, I was being prepared for this. So